Originally scheduled for March of this year and then April. You folks wanted it, you asked for it, you get it. It's 45-year-old Aleksei Oleinik taking on 39-year-old Ilir Latifi. And the craziest part about this is for Latifi and Oleinik, first fight falls apart, second fight falls apart on short notice. Jared Vanderaa accepts the call, and Aleksei Oleinik gets the fight down to the mat.
Did Jared Vanderaa learn a new submission that night?
Yeah, that was weird. Gets him in a scarf hold and submits him very quickly in the first round. That's Aleksei Oleinik's 60th victory. He has, 47 wins by submission.
That's incredible.
You want another one? 12 wins by Ezekiel choke. He's got 2 in the UFC, 1 over Victor Pesta, 1 over Junior Albini. He has 6 performance of the night bonuses with the UFC, 9-7 in the UFC. So it's not that great for Aleksei Oleinik, but the highs are high and the lows have been low. And that's kind of the thing. When you look at it for Oleinik, yes, we're going to take this with a grain of salt because the level of competition was very good.
Very.
But Oleinik was highly ranked, so you gotta fight the good guys. He fights Derek Lewis, almost finishes him, and then doesn't end up finishing him and ends up losing.
Out.
He fights Krzysztof and looks bad and gets finished. And then he fights Sergey Spivak and he loses the decision. Go back and watch that fight. Spivak's gonna fight Derek Lewis next. That's fun. We all now understand how good Sergey Spivak is. You don't need the brothers at Fight Night Picks to just sing his praises for years. Now he's here. But for Aleksei Oleinik, he got beat pillar to post, couldn't take the fight to the mat. Really, it could have been finished at multiple points. For Oleinik, he finally started to look like a 43, 44-year-old, and then he fights Jared Vanderaa, and he found the fountain of youth again.
That's the thing about Aleksei Oleinik. When he does fight any of the upper echelon heavyweights at this point in his career, he's just not going to be that competitive with them. Let's just be honest. Because at 45 years of age, he does lack the explosion to go into some of his takedowns. And Aleksei Oleinik was never one of the highest, level of athletes to begin with. And it's kind of like being like Luka Doncic. You can be really good if you're technical. You don't really have to be really athletic. If you do, just really focus on the margins. And that was always the thing about Aleksei Oleinik. Had a very unorthodox style of striking, but he made it work for him because you do have to work.
Explain the unorthodox striking.
He loop strikes over like he's Deontay Wilder, but he doesn't have the power. The weird thing is, though, they do land. Like, I always go back to the Travis Brown fight because it's a good example of Aleksei Oleinik at his most lethal. He drops Travis Brown with a strike and he submits him with a rear naked choke off the ground. It allows him to sort of showcase both aspects of his striking style. But the problem was, that was all the way back at UFC 213. Like, that was a very long time ago now, and Oleinik just isn't that same fighter that he used to be. But in this matchup against Ilir Latifi, it will be interesting because at heavyweight, Latifi has chosen to wrestle a lot more in this weight division. If you go back to the Tanner Boser fight, close fight, but still, the wrestling of Latifi was definitely enough for him to be able to edge the win out. And if he does decide to start wrestling with a guy like Aleksei Oleinik, that's how Oleinik can get unorthodox with his chokes. You can make one small mistake, he can take a mile, and he ends up submitting you. But the thing is, if Oleinik's not the one initiating his own takedowns, being the one who's able to get on top of his opponents, I just don't know if he has enough energy from the bottom position to do one of those big actions to then maybe be able to sweep a guy like Ilir Latifi, get on top of him. And the other thing I will say too is, Latifi's striking hasn't looked all that lethal in his UFC tenure at all times. He's not the greatest striker in the world, but when he lands some of those overhands, they are very damaging shots. Again, go back to the Ovince St. Preux fight. OSP and Ilir Latifi was like a borderline title eliminator at one point. I know that's a weird thing to say, but both those guys are streaking in the division. Latifi cracks him with a big overhand, hurts OSP on the feet, and when OSP puts his head down, Latifi's able to get him with a really nice guillotine and finish him. I just think Latifi is a good enough grappler to where he won't fall for some of those rookie mistakes that Aleksei Oleinik can make guys fall for.
And I mean, look at his neck in the picture. Like, that really does help out Ilir Latifi. You look at his first overall MMA fight where he takes on Blagoy Ivanov and the ring breaks like it's WWE at like Monday Night Wars with TNT. And you look at Latifi now and it is a lot of single strikes, not really a lot of boxing combinations, a lot of power shots. And Aleksei Oleinik he just throws hammers. Oleinik throws wild looping hooks. I used to think Damian Maia kind of struck like that, but it's like if you took Damian Maia and then made him into like some weird fairy tale character. That's what you get with Aleksei Oleinik. Some guy just coming out of the night, creeping around, throwing his arms out like this. And if he gets a hold of you, oh boy.
Check yourself before you wreck yourself.
He's going to pull you down on top of him and then submit you. Just things that you would never expect. But you consider it for Latifi, his best wins, the OSP win, or The win that he had over Tyson Pedro just kind of beat him pillar to post. Really good one.
Oleinik won't be that much bigger than Ilir Latifi either. People gotta remember, Aleksei Oleinik fought Chael Sonnen outdoors and Sherdog all the way back when. Bodog, thank you. Oleinik's not a big heavyweight, never has been throughout his career, so a lot of these light heavyweights who are gonna make the move up to heavyweight and just decide not to cut weight, for lack of a better term, they're going to be the same size physically as Aleksei Oleinik, and I do expect Ilir Latifi, yes, he might have a couple Oleinik might have a couple inches on him, but for the most part, these guys are going to look very similar in there. I don't expect Oleinik to have a big heavyweight weight advantage going into this matchup.
And we've seen Ilir Latifi, you know, he was always billed out of All-Stars, then he went down to Florida to train. Now it seems like he's based at Extreme Couture. I threw up the picture before the last Ilir Latifi fight that was supposed to happen where he's in the gym wearing a Carmelo Anthony
Knicks jersey,
cool. Which is wild, and he's boxing with Francis Ngannou. But for Latifi, it very much is power shots to get the takedown, and then kind of lay and pray with a lot of his takedowns, as it's been lately.
Cardio's not good either.
We do look at the odds in this matchup. Couple of older fellas at heavyweight. Oleinik open a plus 170, plus 150. Latifi open minus 200, minus 180. We have a look at the Tapology votes, Matt. Surprised us they are to you, and I have no fucking clue where they're going to be. I'm going to say over-under because the guy's got 47 submission wins. I'm going to say over-under 60% Oleinik.
I think Latifi's going to be the favorite.
Oh, boy. And it's close, and you're right. 707 total votes, 53% Latifi, 39% by decision, 55% by knockout for the 47% that have Oleinik, 81% by submission. So, Matt, the fans have Latifi. The odds have Latifi. Do you have Latifi?
I do have Latifi. I don't feel good about the prediction either because Latifi's cardio does fall off a effing cliff after about the 7-minute mark in the majority of his fights. So I can see a world where he's going for a lot of takedowns on Oleinik, not really able to accomplish much with those takedown attempts. He finds himself getting tired in the second or third round. Physically, Oleinik's able to wear on him, and you can see a path for Oleinik to be able to get a submission victory as the fight does go to an end. But Aleksei Oleinik hasn't made the third round since he fought Fabricio Verdum, and that was a while ago, and that fight was terrible. Let's just call it what it was.
It was the worst.
It was just an awful fight between those two guys. So I do expect Ilir Latifi to be able to defend the takedown attempts from Aleksei Oleinik so he can stuff that part of his offense. And I think on the feet, even though I like the striking style of Oleinik, like if you looked at him just throwing punches, you would think, hey, this guy is a net negative on the feet, even though really if you look at his whole career, he isn't, just because again, the threat of the takedown does help him open up a little bit of his own striking. But I do think Ilir Latifi, he's hard to hit clean. The lack of a neck might help him with some of the submission defense, but he does hold his hands quite high. He is difficult to clip clean unless you're like a Volkan Oezdemir who can really put a lot of punches together. So I like Ilir Latifi in this matchup.
I would like Latifi, and as the fans had said with the Tapology votes, if he's going to get the win, maybe he can eke out a decision. If not, he gets a TKO win, and I would think that's got to be an early one, because if you do look at it for Aleksei Oleinik, I think back to that first round against Chris Daukaus that went so bad. Standing TKO loss, almost happened again against Sergey Spivak if Latifi can get it done. But his hand speed isn't there like those two guys. He doesn't throw nearly as much volume as those two guys. And at heavyweight, he tends to rely on his takedowns, which plays into the game of Ilir Latifi. Which plays into the game of Aleksei Oleinik. I'm going with a 45-year-old in 2022, a guy that was born in 1977. It feels bad, but I'm going to go with Aleksei Oleinik. I think that the strengths of Ilir Latifi, the power punching, yes, that's great, but everything else plays into the hands of the older man.
Do you think Oleinik watched Albert Pujols hit 699 and 700 was like, hey, if he can do it, so can I?
Like, yeah, well, listen, material things, I'll let the fan keep the ball. Aleksei Oleinik, what's he going to do if he wins again? Pull his cup out and throw it into the crowd?
That's
like,
a lucky fan.
That's what somebody wants. Matt, both of us split on the pick. I'm going with Aleksei Oleinik. You're going with Ilir Latifi. Let us know down below who gets the win in a battle of men aged, a combined age over 80? It's not pretty.
It's not.
Big time fight in the main event. Mackenzie Dern taking on Xiaonan. You're not going to want to miss. Keep it locked in with Fight Night Picks. We always say,
let's get into it.